People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos, a bi-weekly podcast about the Cthulhu Mythos, hosted by DB Spitzer. What's Lovecraftian?
All right, so we're going to be talking about the Cthulhu Mythos, of course, as we always do, but we're going to be talking about something a little bit different today. Normally we talk about who someone is, what they wrote, but I've been around on the internet lately and I'm coming across something. A lot of motherfuckers out there don't know what Lovecraftian means. Alright, let me just start you out. Simply having Cthulhu on something does not make it Lovecraftian. Just because you went to Hot Topic and bought a t-shirt that has Lovecraftian imagery on it, that doesn't make it Lovecraftian. That makes you a corporate shill. That makes you someone who That's the equivalency of going out and buying something, if you're Christian, going out and buying stuff because it has a cross or Jesus's face on it. That doesn't enhance your like of the Cthulhu mythos, anything Lovecraftian. All it does is tell other people, I like this stuff. I may not know a lot about it, but I like it. And that's cool. That's cool if you want to wear stuff. That's cool if you want to... But it's stupid to just use Cthulhu as this hyper-real symbol of madness, like this tongue-in-cheek, like madness and horror, if you don't understand what is and what is not Lovecraftian. I feel like I'm teaching a remedial English class here, people. I go out there and I go to film festivals, I go to comic book stores. I'm just being out and about. And this fake ass nerd culture, it's not nerd culture, it's consumerism. Going out and buying shit doesn't make you a better nerd. Being a writer, being a creator, being someone who does nerdy things. I'm sorry, 30, 40 years ago, nerds, it wasn't about who could get the most stuff. It wasn't about, hey, look at all this stuff I got from Loot Crate. It wasn't about recording yourself and playing it to other people. It was about doing things. You know, your computer nerds, they built their first computers in their garages. That's why we know who they are. And your comic book nerds, they didn't make much money. Read Dan Klaus's Poussey to get an idea of what the comic book industry is actually closer like, or was like in the 90s. Nerd culture should just... It's what people are calling nerd culture nowadays, to me it just feels like fad culture. It just feels like people being like, this is cool, this is hot, this is rad, I'm gonna get it and I'm gonna criticize people who aren't. That's not what being a nerd is. I mean, I can't really tell you what nerd culture is or isn't. I can tell you spending X amount of money to be nerdier than the other people around you is a losing game. Next time, instead of spending X amount of money on a bunch of Attack on Titan gear, or, I don't know, before you spend a bunch of garbage money on a bunch of garbage things that you'll probably, like, get rid of in a couple of years. Because a lot of this nerd stuff, you're not going to care about. It's not going to stick with you. Not a lot of this stuff does. Trust me, as you get older, you'll just be like, what the hell was I thinking? Why did I care about this? Why didn't I care about this real stuff instead? So, why don't you try creating things instead of just, I don't know, complaining about things? Instead of consuming mass quantities of anime, television, video games, casual tablet games, stuff like that, learn to create. Even if it's just making a YouTube channel and learning how to edit software, create a little bit. Make your own comic book. If there's stuff that you want to do, learn how to do that stuff. Don't just simply say, I want to be a game designer, and tell your friends how you want to be a game designer and watch videos on how to be a game designer. Learn exactly what you need to do to become a game designer. Learn what you need to do to become a comic book artist. I'm 52 years old. I can't become a comic book artist. Yeah, you can. Didn't say you had to go work for Marvel or DC. Do something for you. What's this have to do with, what's Lovecraftian? Not a goddamn thing.
People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Brought to you by Equus Cigarettes. Cigarettes for horses, finest Pomeranian tobacco. Look for us on the Twitter, the Tumblr, the Facebook, the WordPress, the YouTubes, and some other stuff. But check us out on pgttcm.podbean.com, and you'll find links to everywhere you need to go.
Again, I ask, what is Lovecraftian?
Lovecraftian horror is a subgenre of horror fiction that emphasizes the cosmic of the unknown, and in some cases unknowable, more than gore or other elements of shock. Though these may still be present, it's named after the American author H.P. Lovecraft.
You know who Lovecraft is, right? Because if you don't know who Lovecraft is, I want you to turn this podcast off right now, slap yourself in the face, go find an internet, and then look up Lovecraft. Oh, here's a surprise for everyone. That Lovecraft bar in Portland is not very Lovecraftian. It's just a goth bar. If you've never been to a goth bar before, go to the Lovecraft bar. Take down some of the pictures of H.P. Lovecraft, and you will have the exact same as you have of every fucking goth bar out there. Same, don't be upset. Don't be upset. It's a goth bar. That's just what goth bars are like. It's like if you go to any English bar, any British pub, they're going to, in America, they're going to be copying a basic concept. And it's so people have a sense of comfortability when they go somewhere. You go to TGI Fridays to be surrounded by antique old crap bolted to walls. You go to places like, I don't know, let's name it the Horse Brass. That's a English style pub in Portland, Oregon, where they have British shit stuck all over the walls, whether it be old Doctor Who stuff from the 70s, scarves for soccer championship stuff that no one at the bar actually ever went to but bought online later, or whether it be old British people, an old photo of British people holding like part of a wing of a Nazi airplane, that kind of stuff. And you have like that patina from cigarette smoke and age and whatnot, and a lot of times it's painted on. But I get off track. This is the rambly part. All I'm saying is the Lovecraft bar isn't Lovecraftian. It isn't meant to be, honestly. It's meant to draw in people. Poe bar probably wouldn't draw in as many people these days. Just saying. Probably just a marketing thing. The Lovecraft Film Festivals, Cthulhu Con, all that stuff. While the events themselves are not very Lovecraftian, the subject matter is exceedingly Lovecraftian. I know I may feel isolation and existential terror whenever I go to these places, but I feel that when I go outside in general. So, yeah. Those are Lovecraftian. The shirts you get, and the mugs you get, and the hats you get, and the stuffed toys you get, not Lovecraftian. Movies, art, yeah, a lot of that stuff is all great and Lovecraftian. What is Lovecraftian? Well, first,
Is it misanthropic? Does it have an outward dislike, distaste, uneasiness towards humanity? Does it have a lack of focus on humanity?
second,
This may be a little trickier with some media, but does it have a preoccupation with textures such as protein slimes, semi-gelatinous substances, ooze and ichor, and everything other than blood, bones, and corpses. Just kind of, again, with the, misanthropic overtones, like, not even, like, human anatomy is what we're talking about here. We're talking about foreign bodily functions. We're talking about completely unknowable. We're talking about slimes and slips and slicks and snots and stuff. Outer-worldly gross.
third,
For it to be really Lovecraftian, it needs to have sort of an antiquarian style about it. Do you say scientist? No, you say man of science. You do not say flashlight, you say handheld torch. And you don't say fleshlight, you say handheld whore. Just make sure you make everything kind of anachronistic, out of touch, out of date, old-timey. Even if it is modern day, you can still make it feel like an out-of-touch, clueless older person interacting with modern times. I don't know. There's a lot of things you can do with that one.
4,
Isolation and detachment. Make sure that the heroes, protagonists, whatever, an element of Lovecraftian horror is, in fact, detachment, separation. Detachment from other people, going back to the misanthropic sort of folk. Detached academics, people in academia who are detached from just the regular standard day-to-day people. Detached, isolated, long-forgotten place in the middle of swamps, Antarctica, isolated farmhouses in the Miskatonic Valley, things like that.
the fifth element of Lovecraftian things.
A sense of hopelessness, a sense of helplessness. Granted, this sense of helplessness does come from a isolated worldview. This sense of helplessness comes from once you realize you are no longer dealing with anything human. You're not even dealing with anything alien as you recognize alien as being. You are outgunned, outnumbered, outclassed, and humanity's days are numbered. The deep ones are going to rise up. The ghouls are going to come out of the subways. The stars are going to become right. All kind of bad shit's going to happen, and you can't do anything.
6,
Questionable genealogy. Forbidden love. That sort of thing. Whether it be, oh, my grandma was an albino ape, or, yes, no, my ancestors used to fuck fish. I'm going to turn into a fish when I grow up. Or something like, I don't know, having your daughter have sex with an elder god, or I guess outer god, elder god, whatever the hell Yog Sothoth is. I don't know. Part of me sometimes imagines, I don't know, Wizard Whately just coming into the kitchen one morning and turning to Lavinia and being like, so, how do you feel about being a mother?
7.
The fragile state of one's sanity. Many times in these stories, things will happen and sanity will get blasted, or you will have a protagonist that will simply faint from everything that's going on. Sanity is a fragile, fragile thing, and being exposed to that is unworldly and unknowable shatters that stuff. Like, I don't know, an analogy where something breaks really small, really fine, and quickly and easily. You can come up with one better than I can right now, so hey, yeah.
8.
Unknowing. Even if we get a good idea of what's going on in a Lovecraftian story, or something with Lovecraftian elements, we are not meant to know everything. This isn't like other stories. There's not going to be some clever breakdown of how everyone did everything. There's some things that are completely unknowable to all of us. There is only so much space in the human mind. There's only so much time in the scope and scale that humans will exist. We cannot know everything, and trying to know that is outside of our scope and scale, it's unknowable. And you mix all those elements together, and you have got yourself elements of Lovecraft, or
Lovecraftian elements, but not Lovecraftian elephants.
People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos, pgttcm.podbean.com.
All right. I think we've got a handle on this whole what is and what is not Lovecraftian. Do we need examples? Okay. Hellboy is Lovecraftian. Archie meets Cthulhu, not Lovecraftian. Most films by Guillermo del Toro, Lovecraftian. Cronenberg films, a fair amount of Lovecraftianness. Yeah. Just because it has a tentacle doesn't mean it's Lovecraftian. It could just be Japanese pornography. Just because it drips slime doesn't mean it's Lovecraftian. It could still be just Japanese pornography. Just because it's isolating, unhuman, and uncaring doesn't mean it's Lovecraftian. It could be German porn.
But what about video games and stuff like that?
All right. Things like Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, probably one of the most Lovecraftian things I've seen. Alone in the Dark, not the movie, but the old video games, super Lovecraftian. Dark Corners of the Earth, Call of Cthulhu, that is actually meant to be the most Lovecraftian Lovecraft that ever Lovecraft a Lovecraft. Yeah, it's once you get a feeling, you start going, oh, it has this antique look, it drips slime, makes me fear about being human or loathe myself, any of these things that might have a clue that it's Lovecraftian. Steampunk stuff is not Lovecraftian. Steampunk is stupid. Get over it. Steampunk is stupid. Having a visual portraitement with Victorian elements and science fiction, it looks dumb. Just be like, hey, look at this thing I made. Don't just say it's steampunk. And diesel punk is even stupider. That's saying, okay, I like the steampunk aesthetic, but can we make it look a little bit more, I don't know, Nazi-ish? Yeah. And instead of steam, can we have, I don't know, dirty, gross junk bellowing out of everything? Yeah, that's great. That's great. Way cooler than steampunk. I'm an asshat. I'm an asshat who couldn't think of anything better than diesel punk. And I think it's cool because I want to be derivative, but I also want to be edgy. Thanks, diesel punk. You fucking turd.
Wow, that was rough. I apologize, diesel punk enthusiasts, steampunk enthusiasts. That was a little rough. That was a little harsh. But seriously, find something worthwhile to do. Same thing with you cosplayers. What's up?
In all honesty, I have no issue with steampunk or diesel punk or cosplay or anything like that. I just think it's stupid when people call things Lovecraftian when they vaguely understand what Lovecraftian is. Bitching about whether something is Lovecraftian, pointless. There's a handful of things that you can check to make sure it's Lovecraftian. If it has several of those, I'd say it's Lovecraftian. If it only has one or two, not Lovecraftian. Or I'm not the final judge on what is or what is not Lovecraftian. I think St. Joshi has taken that mantle. No, he doesn't even want that mantle.
But I'll tell you this. He'll tell you this too. Quit dumbing down the mythos.
But what's this mythos you talk about?
Well, I'm talking about the Cthulhu mythos, what this show is about. You know, the People's Guide to the Cthulhu mythos.
Well, why would you call it the People's Guide?
Well, that's because other people are supposed to be sending me things. Other people are supposed to be contributing. That was the whole premise of this concept of a podcast.
The Cthulhu mythos, a term first coined by the polarizing author August Derleth, who kind of took over after Lovecraft. Whether or not you think that's a good idea or a bad idea is up to you, and keep it to yourself, because this isn't the I Hate August Derleth podcast. This is the August Derleth Existed podcast. I need to stay on topic is what I need to do. The Cthulhu mythos is a shared literary world, specifically in science fiction / horror, fantasy. Yeah, and it pretty much what you need to have it take place in the Cthulhu mythos is several things. You need eldritch gods. You need books that were handed down by these eldritch gods in one way or another, whether it be inspiration that was given to someone who they then carved into a stone, and that stone was the one last thing left of their civilization that some shut-in, probably from the Massachusetts area, finds, records, madness follows. Something along that line. That would be a standard Cthulhu mythos story. We take the Lovecraftian elements, and then we take the very specific things from the Lovecraft mythos, which we'll go into in just a slight bit. And we take all this Yog-Sothory, we mix it all together, and we get the Cthulhu mythos. The Cthulhu mythos, though, is a public domain, shared world that everyone from I don't know, Robert Bloch to Cody Goodfellow pull from? I mean, this is a big deal. Big deal to us. I mean, if it wasn't a big deal to us, you wouldn't listen to some nobody talk about some people who are dead. I wouldn't. There tends to be a lot of talk of ancient space gods, cults, books bound in human flesh, inhumane alien monsters that care little for humanity. Pretty much a lot of the elements that make up the Cthulhu mythos are also the same elements that are Lovecraftian. It's not too hard. Go back to other episodes that I have where August Derleth explains the Cthulhu mythos, and he does a really good job about that until he starts going into elemental stuff. But before Derleth ruined, as some people say, the Cthulhu mythos and took some stuff that Lovecraft had written after that he had died, added his own flavor to it, and put his name on the book, but not necessarily on the story. Thanks, August Derleth. We had something that some people, I won't say all of us, but some people refer to as Lovecraft mythos. A term mostly used by S.T. Joshi. But Joshi's identified 4 key elements in Lovecraft's stories, in the Lovecraft mythos. Robert M. Price says that it's 3, but here are the 4 basic fundamental principles of a Lovecraft story. First, you have the fundamental principle of cosmicism. Go back to my cosmicism episode and listen to it. More or less talking about the irrelevance of humanity. You need an imaginary, make-believe, pretend New England setting, whether it be Dunwich, Innsmouth, or Miskatonic University in Arkham, Mass. You need a reoccurring pantheon of pseudo-mythological entities and a collection of arcane books in which they come from, or described in, or responsible for. And that's your Lovecraft mythos. I hope you learned something. I hope you won't refer to something that is just goofy and silly, or Sufi and Gilly, as I almost said, Spinnerism, spam, yeah. And thank you so much for listening to episode 11, No, this isn't episode 11. This is its own damn thing. We're going to call it episode 11.5, even though it has no bearing or reference to episode 11. Thank you so much for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos.
PGTTCM, People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Check us out on pgttcm.podbean.com, PGTTCM on the Twitter, PGTTCM on the Tumblr, PGCCTM on the Facebook, PGTTCM on the Twitter. And if I said any of those wrong, just know that it was PGTTCM.
People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos is brought to you by the fine people at Portland Public Podcasting. Track down Portland Public Podcasting. Become your own podcaster. Start your own show. Amazing, I know. Executive producer is Daniel B. Spitzer. Segment producer is Dorch Glorford. Sound engineer is Omar Burton. And marketing by The Drunk Satan Robot. You can check out everyone's sites through links at pgttcm.podbean.com Or you can check out People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos.wordpress.org. Yeah, I know. I've got one of those fancy sites. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week. We talk about some worms, not sandworms, not worms from Saturn, nothing cool like that. This is different. This is kind of a game of Exquisite Corpse with books.
The challenge from beyond.
So again, thank you for listening. Give us 5 stars on the iTunes, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, do whatever you do with Tumblr and WordPress. Did you know we have a YouTube page? We got a YouTube page. We got an Etsy page. We got a Society 6, a Redbubble. We got stuff of mine shows up on Wani Low from time to time. And other than that, you can kiss my grits. Thank you for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos.